Good afternoon and welcome to the Iowa Legislative Hour. I am Kevin Hall along with my co-host Art Smith. Art, good to see you this week.
It's good to see you too.
And we are joined by three Republican senators from the Iowa State Senate. Brad Zahn from Urbandale, who is going to be a regular on this brand new show. Brad, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us today from Ankeny, State Senator Jack Whitfer, and from Ottumwa, we have State Senator Mark Shelgren. Now, gentlemen, let's get to what happened in the Senate today because there was some pretty heated debate going on in terms of the 4% allowable growth. Who wants to start this discussion off?
I will go ahead and take that one. Basically, what we had today was we had a vote on whether or not to automatically increase the amount of money we spend per student in the state of Iowa. Only dilemma we run into with that is there's no accountability. There's no actual plan to improve the education in the state of Iowa. Currently, in education spending, we are I believe 35th in the state, and this would bring us down to 30th in the state as far as total spending. But we are in the we're 25th in overall results. In the nation. Okay. Thank you. In the nation, and so the dilemma ends up being is if there were simply a straight ratio of how much money you spend to the results you get in education, then I think every state would be rushing to spend more money. The dilemma ends up being the District of Columbia, Washington D.C., spends the most per pupil and has the worst rating for education in the entire country. You follow that up, and you've got New York, and you've got California, and you've got Hawaii, who have abysmal rankings with regards to how well they educate their kids, and yet they spend a huge amount of money doing it. So it is not a linear progression of how much money is spent versus how much success you get from that money. And so we're trying to implement common sense changes to the education system in the state of Iowa so we can improve the education system. I mean, the goal is to improve it, obviously.
Now, Governor Branstad is talking about his education reform package, and he wants education reform done before any allowable growth or any discussion of that happens. What was the breakdown of the vote? Was it party lines 26-24?
It was a straight party line, 26-24 vote. And the governor very politely at the beginning of the session asked us to address education reform before we even talked about allowable growth. The issue is his education reform plan is a $190 million a year plan. It's nice to know how much of that is going to pass before we go and spend another 120, 150 million. And so the Democrats will argue that they're totally different issues, but it's the same thing. It's how much money we're going to put into education this year. And the governor brought that out day one, asked us to address his reform plan first, and the Democrats have continued to ignore that.
Obviously, the bill has an undetermined fate in the House. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to accomplish education reform this year?
I think we will get an education reform bill passed.
Okay.
I think it will be a lot like last year, where it's significantly watered down. The House has made a lot of changes to it, and I'm sure our chairman in the Education Committee in the Senate has a few ideas that he's going to throw out there as well. And so I think we will get a bill. I think it will be vastly different from what the governor put out there.
My prediction
Brad,
is
yes.
we will have a bill, and it'll do little to nothing to increase student performance in the state of Iowa. They'll probably in the end spend a lot more money. Very frustrating for me. One thing that the Senate Republicans are really advocating for is some school choice to be part of that component of reform, and the governor's been open-minded, to be fair there. But my prediction is we're going to get little to zero in regards to increase in student performance.
Now, for superintendents around the state, they're saying, we don't know what our budget is going to be next year. Are we going to get the 4% allowable growth? Is it going to be zero, like I believe it was last year? I mean, they want something passed as soon as possible so they can know how to budget for next year. So
yeah, I don't think they're going to get 4. If I had to predict right here on this show, I'd say they're going to get 2%.
Interesting.
But I do hope that we get it done before they have to submit their budgets. That's important to Ankeny, I know. We're trying to lower taxes in Ankeny, and we can't do that if we don't know what the allowable growth is. So whether it's 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. We need to get it done before the budgets are certified, in my opinion, just to allow those school districts to plan. It's not fair to them if we don't.
Sticking with the subject of taxes, Senator Whitfer, you have introduced an interesting bill to abolish the income tax in the state of Iowa. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about and working on for the last couple of years. And I think it's because the reason I'm a proponent of this bill is you look around the country at the states that are succeeding and creating the most jobs, and it's the states that don't have an income tax or a low income tax. Right now, there's 9 states in the country that have no income tax, a personal income tax, and there's 4 or 5 others that are going that direction. And I think it's time that Iowa looks at that. My bill is a very simple bill. It just says we're going to take the off session, look at it, figure out what we need to do to make sure our budget stays in order while we eliminate the income tax, come back next year and get it done. So I think it's a very reasonable proposal to start looking at that, and I think it's something that we definitely need to take action on.
So do you have some thoughts about what that might look like in terms of a consumption tax as a replacement?
Yeah, 2 things. The questions I've got the most this week is, well, are you going to raise my property taxes? No. I wouldn't do anything that raises property taxes. I think ours are already too high. So I think that's a death wish to even think about property taxes. I think the first thing you start looking at before you raise any tax is the number of things that we have sales tax exemptions on in the state of Iowa. So if you take everything that could possibly be taxed that is purchased in Iowa, we have 15 pages of things that are exempted from sales tax. If we got rid of all those exemptions, which I'm not advocating for or against at this point, we need to look at it and talk about it, we would have more than enough money to get rid of the income tax. That's what our fiscal department has told us. And so I think that's the place we start, is looking at all those exemptions.
So what do you see happening with this bill? I mean, is this going to go anywhere?
What has happened is frankly what I hoped would happen, which it started a good discussion on the internet. It got a lot of attention on a lot of different sites and on Facebook. It's not something the Register is going to report about because that's something they don't care about. But my plan was to take it right to the people through social media and through the internet, and it's got some success in that direction. The only chance we have is I can maybe find somewhere to put an amendment on to see if we can run that to get our study done. But it's probably going to end up in the same fate as a lot of our bills that we may talk about today, and that's in the trash can.
Brad, any thoughts on Jack's bill?
Well, I actually have a bill that I've actually haven't drafted right now that's a little bit step ahead of Jack. It's a step in regards to we do a lot of interim studies, and we've studied this issue. Actually, what I've got LSA looking at is what they're doing down in Texas in regards to income tax, and obviously it would be an increase in the sales tax that would hopefully offset the increase in income tax. And Senator Whitford is 100% right. The states that are out there succeeding right now, that are growing, do not have an income tax. And not to mention, when we sit down with Hy-Vee store directors and executives from different corporations in the state of Iowa, they leave. We have a lot of successful people that leave here because of our income tax right now.
And it's not just Hy-Vee CEOs. There's a lot of seniors and grandparents that leave the state because they don't want to pay the 10% income tax. So it's really breaking families apart of people that would prefer to stay here. You know, granted, we'll never have the warm weather of Florida or Arizona, but that's not the biggest reason people leave, in my opinion. Most people, if they have grandkids and kids around here, they want to stay here, but it's tough financially to do so with our current tax situation.
Or you could just head northwest up to South Dakota.
Yep, and that's another reason I think it's negligent for us to not look at it, because South Dakota already doesn't have one, and Nebraska's governor has put forth this idea to start looking at it. So as the states around us start looking at it, I think it's something we need to be looking at as well.
Senator Shelgren, your
Yes.
thoughts on abolishing the state income tax?
Oh, I love it. I'm sitting here just really impressed with these two gentlemen and the fact that they are thinking what we need to do. You know, as a small business owner and someone who's really happy to have my family here, it's important that Iowa can grow. We want to grow the economy, we want to grow jobs, and I think the state income tax is something that actually limits us in the ability to do that. We also need to be discussing, the corporate income tax rates, which are amongst the highest in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're talking about property tax issues, but I think Senator Whitford and Senator Zahn are exactly accurate, which is it's all about the income tax. Because right now we actually tax Social Security benefits, we tax all these retirement benefits, and we shouldn't be doing that. Our seniors have worked their entire lives. A lot of military guys have traveled around the world, and when they want to come back to Iowa and spend time with their families, we're basically penalizing them for that.
One topic that's been on a lot of people's minds is the gas tax. Who would like to tackle this very controversial subject first? Brad, thoughts on the gas tax?
I've got a bill right now, and I was talking to a colleague in the House that's actually looking at this bill. I go to my forums, and I get a lot of emails like Senator Whitford and Senator Shelgren does. They're saying, okay, you're talking about sending me money back in regards to a tax credit or a check. But in the same breath, you're talking about raising the gas tax. It just doesn't make much sense. So what my bill does says that we take 1% of all revenues, and it goes automatically into the road use tax fund, which would, in addition to the gas tax that's already being generated, or the revenue's been generated by the gas tax, what it does is it drops that into the road use tax fund, and then it would add another $66 million based on what the projected revenues are this year. Now, I know the House is talking about, actually, as Representative Schultz was talking about, he's going to offer a bill that says 5%. So it would really escalate that amount. I really believe that what we need to do is we need to become more efficient in delivering the services that we do. We have too much revenue. Iowans have overpaid in taxes. We need to return that with them, and absolutely will not support an increase in the gas tax. That's me personally talking. And we have members that feel differently than that.
Jack, your thoughts on the gas tax?
Well, it's obviously a tough political issue, and it's been around a couple of years, and whatever we do, we need to solve the long-term problem, and raising the gas tax does not get us to that solution. When you look at the fuel efficiency that's coming from cars and electric cars and those types of things, the gas tax doesn't account for that very well. So, I would be surprised if it came up this session, but we need to look at something that fixes the problem and not just extends the gas tax, in my opinion.
Senator Shelgren, I'm going to assume you're probably thinking along the same lines as these gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm not a big tax raiser across the board on anything. Currently we have average fuel price in Iowa is about $3.59 a gallon. I don't think we're going to be dealing with raising the fuel tax this session because I think the prices of fuel, for the most part, are too high. I'm against it in general. I mean, we have two issues going on here. Senator Zahn pointed out very well. We have this excess revenue that we've taken from the taxpayers of Iowa, but we also have a cash flow. Right now, we have a very strong positive cash flow, and the idea is, with that strong positive cash flow, how can we make a long-term investment in the people of Iowa and get some of that money back to them? Because, quite frankly, I trust Iowans with their money more than I trust politicians with their money.
Sounds good. Well, you are listening to the Iowa Legislative Hour. Kevin Hall, along with my co-host Art Smith, and we have Senator Brad Zahn, Senator Jack Whitver, and Senator Mark Shelgren. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to discuss more of the 2013 Iowa legislative session.
Hey, do you have your business card on you?
Studios. This is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right, or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Legislative hour. This is Art Smith along with Kevin Hall, and we've been talking with Brad Zahn, Mark Shelgren, and Jack Whitfer, and covering some great topics. I wanted to come back to a topic we kind of touched on in the last segment about the current surplus that we have in the Iowa budget. And Jack, it sounds like you might be the guy to really give us some good feedback on this. But a couple of things. There's been a lot of talk about how can we spend this money? Where can we spend this on libraries? Can we spend this on roads? Can we spend this on what? What can we spend this on? And of course, we've got a number of different opinions about whether we should spend it, send it back to Iowans. One of the questions I have is, in some of the proposals to send the money back to Iowans, it looks like we'd be talking about doing it as part of a tax credit for 2013 taxes, which means Iowans wouldn't see this money for another year yet. And I'm wondering, is that really the only way we can do that? Is there a way to get the money back in Iowans' hands sooner? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there was a few different proposals out there, whether we cut a straight check and send it out. That's been done in the past. I think Governor Ray did that, years ago.
Yep.
Ultimately, the House originally put out the bill to do the tax credit. I think they thought that it would reduce some of the administrative costs, and you're not wasting money with checks and the bureaucracy. And so they thought that was the cleanest way to do it. We can argue back and forth about the best way to do it, or is it fair to give everyone the same amount when they put in different amounts in taxes?
Sure.
There's a lot of different issues with that. I think the important thing to remember is we stood on the floor and put the amendment up to get it back to the taxpayers instead of spend it. When you have that money sitting around, it will be spent at the Capitol. Make no mistake about it. And that's, there's a few things to keep in mind that's important to know about this surplus. First of all, it's not an ongoing yearly surplus. This is money that was saved up over the last couple years in ending balance. And so I think there's a misconception that we have a huge yearly surplus going and we can spend whatever we want with this money. We only have a surplus on a yearly basis of about $150 million. We're about $6.7 billion in revenue and about $6.55 in expenses. So our yearly surplus is not that big. What we've said with the surplus money, or the ending balance money is more accurate, is we cannot spend that on ongoing expenses. And that's been a lot of the proposals out there. Well, we need more for mental health. We need more for education. We need more for you name it. And all those things may or may not be true. The problem is if we give this one-time money for those expenses that will be there next year and the following year, we leave a huge gap in our budget. And that's essentially what Governor Culver did in 2008-9 when he used all the federal money, stimulus money. He used our cash reserve account money to spend money on stuff that's ongoing. And so the following year, that money's gone, and we end up with 10% across the board cuts. So you have to resist that temptation if you really want to be fiscally responsible with it. I think the other big concern I heard from my fiscal conservative friends, they just said, well, save it. At your household, if you have extra money, why don't you just save it? Well, there's two issues with that. First of all, we have $625 million in our cash reserves right now. in our economic emergency and cash reserve. So we have 10% of our budget. That's our statutory limit.
Yep.
We have that right now. We could say, yeah, we'll save another $800 million. Now we're at $1.5 billion of just sitting in the state account, not being pumped back in the economy. I think it's much better to get that money back in the economy and grow the economy so that we have more revenues in the future. It doesn't do any good just to sit on that money. And so, there's a lot of issues with it. The big thing, we want to get it back to the taxpayers somehow. Tax cuts, tax credits, whatever. We want to get it back in their hands. We haven't been able to do that so far, but I'm sure that will be an ongoing discussion as we go along.
I know there was an effort by Senator Randy Feenstra from up in Sioux County, Hull, I believe is his hometown, last week to attach an amendment to one of the property tax bills, and the Democrats just wouldn't even allow discussion on it.
And that's frequent. Maybe Mark can talk about that, but that's frequent that we put amendments out there that are what they call germane, which means it's related to the bill. That whenever you run an amendment, it has to be related to whatever is on the floor. We felt this amendment was germane. It was directly talking about the taxpayer trust fund. Unfortunately, it was completely blocked in the Senate, like everything that we've tried to bring forward the last couple of years. So that's unfortunate. But the last 2 years we've been sitting around complaining about that. It hasn't done us any good. We need to start putting out big, bolder proposals, and that's kind of why I tried to shift the discussion towards big things for the state, like the income tax.
Well, we've talked a lot about taxes. Let's shift to one of Brad Zahn's least favorite topics: traffic cameras.
Well, there's several of us, and Senator Shelgren, you can jump in on this. I first of all do want everyone that is your listeners to obey the traffic laws that are there. I'm not advocating breaking laws. It is not my number one agenda item, but somehow I've become the poster boy on this. What we're going to do is I would like to get rid of them completely. I know that the House subcommittee last night or the night before did pass pass through in subcommittee a bill that would say all the money is going to the road use tax fund. Well, it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is from the cities and the counties. I could probably predict what it is. They're not going to be happy about it. But of course, it's all about public safety, which is not true. Here's what my prediction is there will be a bill, because I've worked with the transportation chairman in regards to some kind of legislation coming through limiting what these cities and counties could do by taking advantage of Iowans everywhere. There'll be a limitation on the fines. There'll be some signage requirements. There'll be definitely will also have a component in there in regards to maybe even how much these camera companies can make. Most Iowans don't recognize or understand that when they write that check, anywhere from 45 to 60, over 60% of that money goes to an out-of-state, out-of-country camera company. These are just slick salespeople that come in and try to sell these things to cities. You got a community in southwest or southeast Iowa with a population of 1,431 people that their city council is considering putting a red light camera, traffic enforcement camera on their town square. Now, I would question how many accidents there are around that town square. But this is just an example of the proliferation that's going on. We will have some legislation that will be passed. We'll also be having conversations about some standards where they're warranted. Definitely the DOT has got input on state highways. Most Iowans don't realize, and I didn't know this, that Iowa is the only state in the United States that allows traffic enforcement cameras on the interstate system, and it's because of flaw in the Iowa code. So we might be having that conversation as well. And Senator Shelgren's been very involved with this as well, and so I don't know.
Well, there's only a couple more things that I guess I would want to add to that, because obviously Senator Zahn has been carrying the ball and taking most of the abuse for it. I appreciate that, by the way. One thing with this is we're dealing with due process. In the Constitution, it talks about the due process clause, and the first step of due process is being able to confront your accuser. In this case, that would be the police officer. And without that ability, I know that a few months ago, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law, and she was having some medical problems. And so I drove across town as fast as I could get there. And whether or not a traffic camera would catch me or not wasn't the first thing on my thoughts. But if a police officer had pulled me over, I would be getting an escort from him and not a ticket. And so there are certain things that we look at in those aspects that I think are important. And so constitutionally, I question whether or not these are even constitutional. Besides that, with the traffic cameras, they're not popular for a reason. We hear all the time it's for safety, but a red light traffic camera actually causes more accidents than it stops. Now, a speed traffic camera in general lowers the accidents. So if you look at the data from all across the country, and so the fact that we would even be considering putting a red light traffic camera in a small community that didn't have many accidents anyway, I think we just need to make sure we look at the facts and judge them accordingly.
We've been about, 3 weeks, almost a month maybe, into the legislative session. I mean, overall, has anything been accomplished? How would you grade how things have worked so far?
I would say it's been slow. One of the things about this session is we've been working with the same capital makeup as the last 2 years.
Right.
Democrats in the Senate and the House Republicans. So a lot of the bills that came forward my first 2 years in the Senate, no one's really bothered to work on passing them this time because they know that they're going to go to the other chamber and just die. And so that being said, we've tried to focus on big issues, on education, on property tax, on some of the big issues, but frankly, I think it's been pretty slow. I know one way to gauge how much we're doing is how many emails we get. Because either people like it or they don't, and they email you about it. And my email box has been significantly slower than the last couple of years.
Brad, your thoughts on how things have gone so far? And maybe looking ahead, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, will we see significant property tax reform, commercial tax? Or is it just going to be the same, not a lot?
Kevin, I filed a bill that said that we should amend the Constitution and meet on a biannual basis like they do in Nebraska. Personally, I think we waste a lot of taxpayers' time and money with a lot of really ridiculous legislation that we've added to the Iowa code books. My prediction of what's going to happen is I do believe there'll be some property tax reform, mostly because both parties ran on that in the last election. I believe that there is going to be something that's going to go on maybe with income tax, where it'll give Iowans a choice. All this, as well as there'll probably be some type of education reform. Bottom line here is we're going to wait till the last minute, like we always do. It'll probably, most of all of our work will be done the last week or 2 weeks of the session. The negotiations need to start sooner. We actually should shrink down the days that we're there. But I do think that we will, in the end, we will get out of there with a budget, unlike what happens in Washington, D.C. And so we'll do the work that we were asked to do, but we'll certainly drag our feet, as has happened the last 8 years that I've been there.
Senator Shelgren, is your prognostication for this legislative session, does it pretty much fall in line with what Senator Zahn and Senator Whitver had to say?
Yeah, it's pretty close. This is the same makeup, 24-26. We're used to the ground-stalling / stonewalling of any kind of bills that we think would move the state forward. I think we're going to deal with a few minor issues. One of the issues I hope that we bring up is a question of what's called tuition set-aside. It deals with basically taking 20% of someone's tuition that goes to Iowa, Iowa State, or UNI, and setting it aside for scholarships or diversity, or increasing the diversity of the campuses, which basically just means that every student who's working hard for themselves or their parents are trying to put them through school is paying 20% more in tuition than they should be paying. And my goal would be to get that struck out completely and make it a voluntary basis. If you truly believe that you want to spend 20% extra and you want to contribute to someone else's education, I think you should absolutely be able to do that. And we'll maybe have a little checkbox next to your name. But I predict that there's quite a few families that I know of that have saved years and years and years to send their kids to school, and they work extra jobs to make sure they can afford that. And the fact that they're paying a lot for those educations, I'd like to see those education costs come down by about 20%.
One bill that was passed and was signed into law by Governor Branstad today, and Brad, you referenced this in your weekly newsletter, Senate File 106, dealing with the federal tax code and the state tax code. Can you explain that one for us?
Well, it's something that we haven't done for the last 3 or 4 years. The Democrats have stopped the legislation to make sure that we are aligned with the changes in the federal tax code. And it is something that we did. I'm really happy that we did that. I said in my, typically I don't compliment in a bipartisan way, but it is something that did happen. It was a good thing for Iowans, mostly considering they're right now going through the process of doing their taxes. So there will be, we'll be able to make the adjustments on a state level on the returns based on what the federal tax changes were.
One topic that we should talk about, because a member of the Senate Ethics Committee is here, Jack Whitver, There have been accusations made against State Senator Kent Sorensen. An ethics hearing was held yesterday. One of the charges was dropped. Jack, can you fill us in on the status of those complaints at this point?
Yeah, being on the ethics committee, I have to be a little careful about what I say, so I don't get myself in trouble. But
you voted the votes broke down 5-1,
right?
And you voted. You were
yep.
with
So
the 5.
So on the 3 charges, basically on one of them, we said even if what this gentleman was claiming was true, it's still not an ethical violation, and so that one was dismissed. The other 2, we basically just said you didn't, you made a claim, but you didn't have any evidence to back that up. Until we have evidence to back it up, we're not going to go to the expense of hiring a private investigator or an independent counsel to go through it. And so that gentleman has the opportunity to bring forward more information. But until then, our work on those 2 claims is finished as well. And it was a bipartisan vote. There was a couple votes against each charge, but it did take Democrats to pass it. So I think most of that will probably be behind us.
Okay. You are listening to the Iowa Legislative Hour. Kevin Hall, along with Art Smith, Senators Brad Zahn, Jack Whitver, and Mark Shelgren. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with much more, some big political news from around the state coming up right after this.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And welcome back to the Iowa Legislative Hour. This is Art Smith along with Kevin Hall and Senators Brad Zahn, Mark Shelgren, and Jack Whitver. Senator Zahn, I think that, when I first moved to Iowa and I heard about, what the state legislature did, and once in a while I'd hear this thing about a funnel, and I didn't make any sense to me earlier in my life. I kind of have a little bit of a better idea now. Can you just give us a little bit of understanding of what the funnel is, what happened today, and what's going to happen over the next few weeks?
Well, technically tomorrow, I think at 5 o'clock is the first funnel date. And what that means is any individual bills, that would be any individual senator wants to file a bill to still be eligible to be voted on, has to be at least a title has to be reserved through the LSA, the Legislative Service Agency. That's the first deadline. And this is a good thing because it really starts narrowing things and funnels these bills down. The second funnel date is when that individual bill obviously has to be written and it has to be out of a committee, either a House or a Senate committee. The third funnel date, they have to be out of both committees. Now, there is some exceptions. Appropriations bills and Ways and Means bills are funnel proof. And leadership bills, there's ways around that as well if it's a leadership bill based on whoever the chairman of that committee is.
So did we, with tomorrow's first funnel then coming, are there any bills that aren't going to make it into this year's legislature because of that date hitting that you're aware of, that somebody's been saying we should do this or we should do that?
I don't.
Usually the first funnel, everyone that's had all kinds, bright ideas over the last 8 or 10 months, they have a bill written and filed. So the first funnel isn't as important as the second or third. The second one's really where it cuts hundreds and hundreds of bills down to 60 or 70 or 80 when you have to get them out of committee. But right now, if you have an idea and you don't have a bill yet, you probably haven't been doing your job down there.
Well, and the other thing also is, if you want to be a creative legislator, you don't need to worry about the funnels. You can always amend something.
Okay. Okay, excellent.
Something else that's come up this week, and obviously it's been discussed in past legislative sessions too.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah. The voter ID. Obviously, Matt Schultz ran on this when he ran for Secretary of State in 2010. He won on the issue. Is there any chance of voter ID passing this session?
I would say no. But I would also say we're not going to stop talking about it because Matt Schultz beat a very popular Secretary of State. Michael Morrow was very popular, well-liked, and Matt Schultz, you're right, he won on that issue alone. The Iowa poll came out this week, 71% of people approve of voter ID. We're going to keep talking about it because we think it's important for the integrity of our elections, and there's no reason not to continue to look at this.
And I saw something Representative Dawn Pettengill over in the Iowa House stated that in the past that it had been limited just to government-issued driver's license, but she was okay with college IDs, high school IDs. Brad, what do you think about that? I mean, voter ID, should it be limited to those types of things? 'Cause I think the argument that some people have made in the past is, well, college students, they should vote, wherever they are from back home. Not necessarily a Grinnell student shouldn't be able to vote in Grinnell, but Representative Pettengill thinks it should be opened up to allow college IDs.
Well, as long as it's a legitimate ID, I do not understand how anyone can make an argument against this. I mean, we know of abuses that have happened. It's obviously not as prevalent as in Chicago and some of the other cities that are out there. But I actually had one email because I wrote on this here a week or two ago, and I said to them, how could you argue about clean elections? And that's basically what we're trying to get. I'd say at this point, Kevin, I would be open to listening to some of the arguments on, I would assume that a college ID would be a legitimate ID, but I'm sure there's some IDs that are probably not legitimate. But certainly we need to have this conversation, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Senator Shelgren, the argument the Democrats take is, this is voter suppression.
Right.
And they say, well, show me where voter fraud is taking place. Well, we've got at least 6 cases already that
That's correct.
Secretary of State Schultz's investigator has found. Can you show me a case where requiring a voter ID is suppression? I don't think there is one. So, I mean, if you throw their argument right back at them, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, what you have to look at when you look at this part of the code has to do with whether or not you're requiring somebody to jump through a hoop to vote. Constitutionally, we cannot have a poll tax. So therefore, if an ID, driver's license, et cetera, would cost money, or even a school ID would cost money, and we were requiring or limiting only a few types of IDs, that would not be acceptable constitutionally.
Okay.
And so we have to provide an opportunity for people to get an ID for free so that we're not incurring a poll tax on them. And so as long as we're doing that and we're making sure that citizens have access to this, I'm very comfortable that we should have to show a form of ID to vote because, I don't want to have anybody's vote disenfranchised. And that means that if somebody's out there and they're cheating the system, then it lessens each of our votes, as citizens, and I want to make sure that our votes are fully counted.
We got just a little less than 10 minutes left and wanted to get to some other topics. You heard it first right here. The first Republican candidate for the Congressional 1st District has announced, and that is Steve Rachi. He ran for the U.S. Senate as a Republican in 2008 and lost in the primary to Chris Reed, but Steve Rachi will be announcing a congressional run coming up officially in probably about 10 minutes, but breaking news here. I have it on good authority.
That's going to be a fun district to watch up there.
Yes, it is.
On both sides.
Of course, that is the seat currently occupied by Bruce Braley, who has announced he is running for the U.S. Senate, which leads us to State Senator Zahn, and it has been reported elsewhere that you are strongly considering running for what will be Tom Harkin's open seat in 2014. Can you tell us where your thoughts are in terms of running for this seat?
Well, Art, do you have any other questions about legislative?
Actually, no, I don't. Sorry.
You know what? I have had, obviously, I got a text message. I was in one of my forums when this surprise happened. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I'm going to say at least a couple dozen people per day are sending me an email trying to encourage me to run or at least consider it. Right now I'm praying. That's what I'm doing. I'm having conversations with my wife. I know that I don't get anything to get second place. I learned a lot of lessons when I ran for the congressional run. People say money is the most important thing, and I would just say ask Jim Gibbons how important money is. I know how to run. Primaries are completely different than generals.
Yes.
I could tell you that I learned a lot of lessons. I lost by 2.5% to Leonard Boswell, and he outspent me about 5 or 6 to 1. And what happened is I did learn some lessons about outside consultants and being muffled and told what to say and what not to say. If I do decide to run, I do believe, and I'm talking to a lot of people that I can't disclose right here, that are very national people that want to help me out. If I do decide to run, I do believe that an outsider from D.C. is going to be very successful. And that's not taking anything away from Congressman King. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Congressman King would be a very strong candidate in a primary. Mm-hmm. I'm really kind of sitting back. I figure I'm asking for some kind of a signal from God, and I want to see who the players are in this race. So I am seriously thinking about this. I've had a lot of individuals offer me a max donation if I would consider to do this. So different than what maybe was said last night, if you get my drift. I do believe that I have a good shot at it. But then again, right now my focus, that's almost a little less than 2 years away. My focus is the Iowa Senate, but I am keeping my options open, and I appreciate you asking the question.
Now, Congressman King said a few days ago that he's leaning toward it. He was 50-50 when Tom Harkin announced about almost 3 weeks ago, and now it's gone above 50-50 in terms of leaning towards running. What is your mindset in terms of that?
I've actually talked to Congressman King for about a half hour, and we had a private conversation. But I have an idea what's going to happen. I do think that it's unfortunate what's happened with Karl Rove. Mm-hmm. I do not think Karl Rove, or anyone else for that matter, needs to come into the state of Iowa and try to manipulate our elections. Yep. And I know his intentions are well. We ultimately, as Republicans, want to have control of the United States Senate. So I know that that's weighing very heavily, and he's said that publicly.
This isn't really an issue that the Iowa legislature can do a lot about, but we're here in downtown. We're seeing lots of wrestlers and wrestling families walk by, and obviously this is a wrestling state. As a lot of people know, the International Olympic Committee decided earlier this week that wrestling would no longer be an Olympic sport after in 2020. Jack, you were a college athlete. Brad, your sons.
I wrestled for 4 years.
Did you? Okay, and your sons, were very good high school athletes. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Wrestling not in the Olympics? And is there anything that as Iowans can do? I know Governor Branstad has spoken out about it. Senator Grassley has as well. Is there something the legislature can make a statement on? Or
I think Senator Zahn talked about doing a joint resolution with Senator Bowman maybe on that issue. I think the unfortunate thing is it doesn't only hurt the Olympics, it hurts every kid that gets into wrestling because you get in with that dream of not only going to the state tournament here, but then to college, but then ultimately it's the Olympics. And obviously very few get there, but that's what keeps a lot of these kids' dreams alive. And to take that away is unfortunate, but I don't know what can be done. Certainly in the Iowa legislature, there's not a whole heck of a lot I can do about it, but it is an unfortunate situation.
Yeah. Brad, your thoughts on what the
I'd say I've talked to Senator Bowman. He is going to have conversations with Senator Gronstal. Oh, obviously, this is not an international issue. This is not a state of Iowa issue. I do believe that enough of us, if we get together as a legislature and just send a signal that we're not happy about that for the reasons that Senator Whitford talked about, I do believe that we're going to have some kind of communication come out of the Iowa Senate this year.
Okay.
I'm sure that people listening to this and saying, yeah, I heard about the Olympics. We're not going to allow wrestling anymore. But what was behind that? What was the
TV ratings and ticket sales?
So it wasn't popular enough.
It wasn't popular enough, but badminton
and fencing and water polo must be doing awesome. Huh?
Handball, sports like that are still viable. But the
Okay.
oldest active sport in the world apparently is not justifiable as an Olympic sport. Sticking with a semi-sports topic, will Chicken Man be on Ragbri this year?
Yes. If you want to call me Chicken Man, I do have my alter ego from when I was much younger, and I appreciate people reminding me of that. I appreciate also them giving me the credit for saying I can eventually grow up. But do I intend to be on Ragbri? Yeah, I rode my bicycle to Ragbri years ago from California. I met my wife on Ragbri. I owe an awful lot to the state of Iowa for the opportunities that I have. And Ragbri is one of those ways that I get to see my friends once a year. I get to share in the camaraderie, get to go through every small town in the state of Iowa and just understand what those individual personalities of those communities have. And it's a wonderful experience. If no one out there has gone on Ragbri, or if you're thinking about going on it, I would strongly encourage people to go out there and do that.
We've got just about 2.5 minutes left. I just want to go around the table and ask each of you gentlemen if you could accomplish one thing this year in the legislature. We'll start with you, Senator Zahn. What would that be?
Well, I would love to see some kind of property tax reform, true property tax reform done. We need to attack the part of the problem, and that's the assessor. I'd be really excited if we got that done. But I want to just say a couple things. Thank you for both of you for being our host of this show. This is kind of a dream child of Mac McCoy. And as you know, the three of us will be not always here at time to time. But this is what I want your listeners to know, is you've got someone that is a fighter and is an incredible, gifted person in the Iowa Senate by Mark Shelgren. That guy has probably in his pocket right now the Constitution of the state of Iowa. And he reads that every day. And he is someone that reminds us, and sometimes not so much the Republicans, but the Democrats kind of sway at different times. But he is great. And you've got another incredibly bright person, but Jack Whitver, who is right now our spokesperson for a $6.6 billion budget. Actually, it's more than that when you figure the federal dollars in. And I think both of them are the future of Republicans and the great things that the Republican Party does in the state of Iowa.
Senator Shelgren, about 30 seconds. What if you could pick one thing to accomplish this year in the legislature? What would that be?
Well, if I had to do one thing, it would have to be income tax reform. And close following behind that would be a true educational reform where we're empowering the parents and the students by having the money follow the kids.
Senator Whitver.
Income tax. I think that's the most important thing as we look forward to the future decades. That's the most important thing we can do now that will help a lot of people over the next several decades.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Art, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's great. I really enjoy the time here with these gentlemen, and I think we learned a lot of good things today and look forward to future shows as well.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Senator Mark Shelgren from Ottumwa, Senator Jack Whitver from Ankeny, and Senator Brad Zahn from Urbandale. My name is Kevin Hall, along with Art Smith. We will be here every Thursday from 4 until 5 o'clock. Talking about the goings-on at the Iowa legislature. This is the Iowa Legislative Hour on Webcast One Live. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.